Good afternoon, everyone who's with us here. Good morning for those of you who are following from the US. Good evening, a very late evening for those of you following from Australia. We appreciate you joining us today for this conference, which will cover the role of an individual in overcoming conflict in a polarized society. My name's Stefan Popovic. I will be your host for today. And I'm extremely privileged to be in this position. I know that when Ana and Vlade Divac asked me to host today's conference, I leapt at the opportunity because not only is this a global opportunity to engage with people in a variety of different countries and different time zones, but also the topic which we're covering today is so applicable, and it will be, no doubt, for a long time to come. The other thing that I found that was very important was that in the midst of COVID-19, we've seen that there has been a rise in conflict and tension, and that won't change. What needs to change is the way that we deal with it, and that's what we're going to discuss today. And we're very fortunate to have some amazing guests who will provide some insight for you. And if you would like to pose a question, we invite you to do so, and then we'll try to get your questions as well as we continue. We'll have a short break in the middle. But another reason I'll quickly mention before I get going with our introductions, I enjoyed taking this opportunity to be here because I've seen firsthand the great work that Ana and Vlade Divac Foundation does, and they're one of the strongest foundations in this region with over 700,000 individuals supporting them, 150 volunteers, and it's a way to help a variety of people. It doesn't matter what your background, what your religion, they just do fantastic work. They've helped to build over 1,058 constructions and renovate buildings as well, and construction projects. In addition to that, one thing that I found was it was a great way to build a bridge between people who need assistance and people who want to provide it. And it's both literally and metaphorically, because they actually built a bridge as well. So in addition to that, there's 3,000 jobs that have been created, and in the midst of COVID, they brought a range of different assistances which were important to Serbian healthcare facilities in the way of $600,000 US. I think that's enough from me. There are a lot of numbers to throw at you, but now I will pass the floor over to Vlade.
Thank you, Stefan. First of all, I would like to say hi to viewers and all the guests today. I really appreciate it for everybody to join today. Discussion about differences among the people and polarization about the societies. I would like to say, from firsthand, from my experience, growing up in a beautiful country and going to United States in the late 80s to pursue my career. Just a few years later, terrible event happened, in my homeland. It was a civil war. And obviously, I went there with, not speaking language, different culture, different mentalities. So I was very different from the people lived in Los Angeles and California. But they were, open arms there to accept me. And those differences between us on a team that ultimately had the same goal actually help us, reach our goal. But I'm saying, how the the polarization about the societies today is a scary thing, going in a very, very wrong direction. I think, we always had a difference between the people, but those differences are basically making us a society better, not worse. And I think, today's discussion about those kind of stuff can really kind of open eyes and see what we can do as individuals to help the society reaching, positive stuff. So again, I appreciate everybody that joined us today, and you're gonna hear from our speakers today more about this issue that is not a local issue; it's a worldwide issue that we have to do something about it and make and be aware where we're going as a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlade. I would now invite Ana Divac to tell us what she thinks about conflict resolutions and how this topic came to be today.
I think I'm so honored to be in the group of these extraordinary people, and what makes them extraordinary is that they're not talking, they're actually doing what they're talking, and they're making a big difference in their society and worldwide. So I really thank you, everybody, for coming today. I am really thankful and grateful. And I'm happy that you're going to share from your expertise and your part of the view how we can make at least one step towards bringing us together. And why I made this conference, because I think it's a global problem now, and thanks to COVID, we can see it and we cannot avoid it anymore and pretend it's not happening. It's not only in Serbia, it's all over the world. It's becoming almost like a branding and logo. If you're not with me, you're against me. And I think that's not true, because so many times in life, we are not with someone and we are not supporting them because we don't understand them, you know. And instead of being erased, I think we should be also educated and be shown like how we can think and how we can do it differently. And I also see there is certain things that we will probably never ever agree, but there is most of the things that we would agree, because we all want to be happy. I mean, now I'm like a miss of the universe. I want a peace in the world. But we all want for our kids to have better education. We want like a better health system. We want more justice in our country, in our lives. And the whole topic is like how I can add that to society, because sometimes when it's such a big problems, you just feel like so small and helpless, and you're thinking, okay, like I'm just giving up. I don't know even how like to solve this. I don't want to even try it. But I think the first step is towards us, so that we understand what we are criticizing, that actually we are doing that, you know, so that we see how we can do that and change that in our personal life, you know. So if we don't agree with someone, and maybe, I mean, we even have a right not to like somebody, but if that person do something that is positive, I think we should clap, you know, because that brings positivity to our also personal lives and to our community. So I don't want to take more time. I just want to give to our speakers, because they are experts on these topics and their interest. I mean, they're going to bring their experience like all over, from all over the world. And my wish and my commitment for this conference is that we just didn't have this conference and then nothing happened. My wish is that we create, all of us here today, I am inviting everybody, that we create some project in the future that is going to make impact. Even like a small one is going to be good enough for now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ana. Now, before we delve into today's topic, of course, which we mentioned at the start, the role of an individual in overcoming conflict in a polarized society, I'll just remind anyone who is following either here in the room with us or who's following online that we will have two separate sessions. There will be a break in between, so time for you to stretch your legs, have a coffee, go to the bathroom, whatever you do in your 5 minutes, and then come back and join us. We also have a number of guests who are joining us via Zoom as people are watching as well, but we're very lucky to have the first of our guest speakers here with us in the room right here in the centre of Belgrade. Our first guest is a world-respected humanitarian and the founder of the Mohanji International Foundation, a man who has thousands of followers on social media and in real life, and he's a world-renowned humanitarian who's dedicated his life to serving the world. Mr. Mohanji, before we get right into it, I want to say that I read an interesting quote on your website that I jotted down. You said, "Dare to be different, that is your signature in the world." Is it easy to be different in today's world?
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Ana and Vlade. This is a beautiful idea that we are speaking about, something which normally we don't speak. But one fundamental question, dare to be different. When I say dare to be different, we are different. We are unique. And we are neither higher nor lower nor equal to anybody. The thumb impression that we carry, the retina of the eyes we carry are all different. The whole creation is different. It's all differences. But we refuse to accept it. What we are taught is to compete and compare. That's where all the other divisions happen. Every division is connected to a fundamental education where we tell people you should be better than the other guy. In which level? In probably getting some money or getting a job or having a position. See, three things: position, possession, relation. This is what we are carrying on our shoulder. And if something happens to it, we are terribly upset. And that's exactly what's happening with the COVID situation now. One word, if you can take out of COVID situation on the whole world, is fear. And it's given in bulk through all the media. So more and more and more fear. And that's destabilizing the whole world, the economy, the production, the distribution, everything is affected. And it sells. Fear sells. Fear can control people. But the truth is that we have nothing to fear. We are here like a tourist. We are born on some time and we die on some time. In between all the experiences that we have, the positions that we have, all these things are temporary. Nothing is permanent. So the moment you start realizing it, you feel like a real powerhouse. That feeling can happen only when we completely detach from the bindings that we have, such as position, relation. I'm not saying go away from it. No escapism, but focus on what we really are, minus all this. Then we realize that we are very, very powerful. There's no need for fear. That gives us dare, a lion's heart, to face the world. And we must. And one of the reasons why we have all these polarities in the world is because of this particular set of education, where we tell people you are better than the other, or you should be better than the other. Compete and win. Winning is actually winning over yourself. If you are compare between your yesterday and today. If you want to compete with yourself, improve yourself. And that will get reflected in the whole world. What we are gets reflected in the world outside. There's no other way. Whatever we are, it shows. There's no other way. We are projecting what we essentially are continuously and consistently, whether we like it or not. But today the situation where everybody are like islands. To travel from one country to the other is difficult. And this is a wake-up call. You know, it's like a warning bell. Look here, what are you really? Minus all these external things which you have been really banking on, removing all this, what are you? And that's when you start realizing there is something else inside.
There's a really wonderful quote that I thought of in that, watching the Life of Brian with Monty Python, when they're saying, you know, he says, I don't want you all to follow me. And he doesn't want us all to follow him. You're all different. He said, we're all different. They all sing in unison. Absolutely. And that lends itself to that. But given that you obviously have so many followers in a variety of different countries all around the world, you actually express that you don't really like to think of them as followers, and there's more to it than that. Would you elaborate, please, for us?
Yes. I mean, when people say that I like what you do and would like to follow you, etc., I said that's actually a very tame affair. What I would like them to realize is that if I have given anything to the world, it's myself. My only investment in this world is myself 100%. That's not what I have, but what I am. What I have could be many things, my position, my qualification, or the profession experience. This is what I have, but I am is different from that. So if I can make somebody realize that thing themselves, that I am completely, I'm free. I'm free from within. I'm born alone. I'll die alone. And all that I'm doing in this world is being myself. As you are, as naked as you are. That's exactly what I would like to guide people to. This is what I tell people. And people, I mean, I never expected that I'll be talking to people. Like I was always an introverted person. But when people started coming, they started selling that now we feel more confident. Now we feel more real. And that's a real thing. Otherwise, you see what's happening now with all these, the changes happening in the world. Everything is entering people. I always tell one thing. The ship is going through the water, but the water is not sinking the ship. Only when the water enters the ship sinks. So if the world enters you and makes calamity inside, then you fall. Nothing should enter you. You do your thing and you focus on it and deliver what best you can. So in this whole tapestry, in this whole affair right now, what you could do is that share what you have, at least cut off from all the negative, toxic things, which pulls you down, which kinds of drowns you, and give to the world as powerfully as you can your identity, the truth that is you, which is invincible. I never believe that anybody is higher than me, nor lower than me. I have never found myself as special either. But one thing I always feel is that if I am walking on this earth, the earth should be a better place than I got it. So if I can add value, what I give is my value, not what I take from earth is my value. So this is what I tell people to do.
So from the perspective of people needing to take action to resolve conflict, people need to also be prepared to become leaders, and some people want to become leaders. What does it take? It's probably a complicated answer, but what does it take to become a leader?
Become a leader, believe in yourself. Just simple. You got to believe in yourself. All of us have our weaknesses and our strengths, our handicaps and our difficulties. But if you believe in yourself, that's the only belief you need. External, it's only when you are awake. When you are sleeping or when you are awake, you are with yourself. So this total acceptance of ourselves is the fundamental in here. And that's not with something. Me with something, me with my foundation or me with my activity. That's all external. Me as I am, that's the only real stuff. Yeah. And that everybody can, in whichever position, whichever level. And that is what the world is consisting of, this variety.
Yeah. Well, today I had something here that I wanted to run past you, because today we talk about conflict resolution. And would you agree that in order to prevent or solve a conflict, one should firstly know oneself and be comfortable with oneself, exactly what you're saying. So they need to understand themselves before they then go and try and solve outside problems. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Accept oneself. Yeah, the calamities are basically, we have been trained to see differences. And when we look through our eyes, which is a conglomeration of our experiences, education, concepts, all these things, through that you see much variety. But beyond all this variety, there is a truth. And the truth is the same as us. We all are here for some time experiencing this life. So the best thing you can do to have great experiences is total acceptance. When we have great resistance, it's pain, separation. You know, it's a discord all over. That's what we see. The calamities that we see in this whole world is created from inside. Otherwise, there's no conflict or calamity.
Well, Mr. Mohanji, thank you so much for joining us today and for your knowledge and your insight. I know that there's a few of us here in the room, so please have a round of applause. Now, we've got our next guest who joins us, but joins us online, and he ensures that today the Australian accent you hear from me will not be the only Australian accent you hear. I'm a massive fan of his. My father was super proud when he heard that I would have the opportunity to chat with him, and his name is Nick Vujicic, a man who almost needs no introduction, but he deserves one. An internationally known motivational speaker, an entrepreneur and author. He's joining us from the United States, where it is morning. Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Popovic. It's wonderful to be with you all. Hi, Vlade. Hi, Ana. Dragomir. Good evening, everyone. Good morning from Dallas, Texas.
Well, that might lead into the first question there. You are, of course, tuning in from the US, from Dallas, Texas. You're originally from Australia, like myself. Tell us about your reasons for moving to the US.
It was the land of opportunity. As we all know, America is the land of opportunity to reach the world. You can't do it from down under, generally speaking. Back in 2000 to 2002, as a late teenager, if there were any motivational speakers that were ever talked about in Australia, they were definitely Americans. And so I think at that time we were a little bit behind America in that. In the West, and I came out to America for a real estate boot camp. I was already an options trader on the stock market and wanted to learn all that I could about real estate. Came out here, learned what I had, went back. But while I was here, I met my uncle Bata, who is cousins with my dad. They used to live together in former Yugoslavia in the 1960s before they left the communism regime in the 1960s and became immigrants. My father and his family went to Australia, met my mum in Australia as her family also migrated to Australia back in the 1960s. And Uncle Bata's family came out to America, and he said, what do you want to do in your life? And I said, I want to make the world a better place, let everyone know that God loves them, has a plan for them, and help as many people as possible. And he said, well, you got to come to California. So at 23 years old, I moved from Australia, was in California for 16 or 17 years, now with a wife and 4 children. after 10 years of marriage. There are major also reasons why we moved from California to Texas, which actually applies to what we're talking today. I just want to say it's an honor to be here on stage.
Well, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us. We'll lead into this topic discussion. So part of conflict resolution, you talk about the importance of ethical values. My question would be, how can we know who has ethical values and who has not?
I think it's all relative, to tell you the truth, Mr. Popovich. We got to understand that with so many diverse backgrounds, right? To understand that, yeah, the power's within you and there's actually no conflict. No, there is always going to be a point with the way that the ripening process is where you have to make a stand. And here in America, especially those who circle around me, they say, well, as soon as you start talking about something, you're becoming political. Well, is it political that my grandfathers were in jail in former Yugoslavia and the government took over my mom's property? Is it political for me to actually refuse mandatory vaccines in California, July 2019, which was one of the reasons why we left? Is it too political to try and convince each other that this is actually much bigger than us, to understand that where the world is going, you're going to have to make a stand. You're going to have to make a stance. And in our individual lives, we all have our own temperature or gauge of what value is based on who you are, how you were raised, your culture, and your belief systems. It's all good to say blah, blah, and we love everyone, and let's make the world a better place. But if my religion is, for instance, to kill you, as an example, then you kind of have to make a stance. Wherein there are countries, Mr. Popovich, that just passed this year, where it's called NABLA. And it's going to be actually something that came from the UN. My acronym for UN is United Nothing, where there are laws that happen in the UN. And the first phase of implementation is Scandinavian countries. And second tier is then Canada. And third is Australia. Fourth is then California. We're always behind Australia in these implementation of rules. And what this is actually a 501c3 nonprofit organization, a movement where people can donate to men having sex with boys. And their tagline, and this is not political, this is freaking fact, okay? This is what this is all about. We can go and be the best me and make the world a better place, but we sometimes need to come to a point to say, wait, where's the line for you? Is it okay for an organization to actually have a tagline, have sex with a boy at age 8 or it's too late? You don't believe me? Go check it out. That's coming to Australia next. And after Australia, it's coming to California next. You can mark my words. And so there's a point where you look at the Amish, a community within America for decades and decades and decades and decades, where they'll never do what the government tells them to do. And they have their own little sovereign community. Wherein here in America, the United States of America, there's a 30% chance that America is going to become 2 republics. Because you are forced, like Ana said, you're either with us or you're against us. And America is in a coma to never believe that America could be something that us Yugoslavians are absolutely accustomed to, where you don't have a flag, you don't have a national anthem, and your country's been divided more than half a dozen times. So this is interesting, where I can say, well, this is what I believe. You can tell me what you believe. That word of toleration, it's conflict until it really affects me, to know, what do you think of that? It's interesting when you say to me, what do you think of this, or this religion, or that belief system, or that governmental law, until it really affects you. And I don't want to get into specificities, but that's kind of where we're at. And there was last thing on this in July, August. So just so you know, I'm a man of the world, 21 presidents, been on TV to 2 billion people, 10 governments. and laws were changed, okay, when I spoke to the government, to allow special needs children to go to school for the very first time. There are still 40 countries, Mr. Popovich, in the world that under religious freedom allow anyone under tribal beliefs to kill a child with a cleft lip or as much as a baby body rash, that they're cursed by the gods, a contagious curse that if not buried alive, they will contaminate the rest of the village. The mother of the child ostracized, never seen again, and kicked out of the village. Is that okay with us? Out of 215 countries, 40 countries still have that. Brazil changed their law in that in about 2010. Another 40 countries actually still have that. So how do you then make a stand? If I can just take it now to the next level, right? I could go on and on and on. I know people, Mr. Popovich. I have friends in 43 countries. And I, in January 2020, have an email to tell everyone, because I watch the world news, please don't watch Western news. If you do, make sure you watch the other part too. And in January 2020, I emailed everyone, buy your masks. Third week of January, I got the email. Buy your mask, stock up on food. I stocked up on food. I ordered my masks. Why? Because I saw what was coming. And what I want you to know is, as a Christian believing in the Bible, where it says the chip on the hand, one world government, everyone going against Israel, there's going to be peace for 3.5 years. As a Christian, everyone has their religion, but as a Christian, I'm not worried because I know that I'm not just going to disappear. I go to heaven. And while I'm here, I'm seeing all these things where you can't buy or sell without a chip. With crypto and all that, from a belief system, we all have our belief system. That's something of Nick that's important. But the other side is this, Mr. Popovich. This is the last thing. I want everyone to understand that you can not only make a stand, but actually make a difference. And how do you make a difference? You make a difference by being a member on your local school board. I don't remember how it is in Australia right now. I've been here now for, I don't know, 20 years right now. That's why I don't have such an Aussie accent like you. But I've been here for 20 years. And in America, there is someone that I heard that might run for governor of Texas. I'm like, if he's running, I'm going to freaking run for governor. I'll beat him before he becomes governor of my state. And it's not a political thing. It's understanding that belief systems, what we must understand is, be a member of your school board, okay? Run for council. Be a mayor, okay? Don't just complain and tell people why you don't believe it. You can't make a difference in this world without either running for politics or supporting someone in politics, period. You want to know why? Because the education system, the policies of tax reform, where Serbia still has 65% income tax, who needs a tax reform, all the other mountains of society, from capitalism to education to nonprofit, it all starts in the political arena. Some of us, I think, Mr. Popovich, need to understand, to really make a difference in the world, you may have to become a politician, or you may have to find who's the politician that you're voting for, or you running for council, you making a little thing called The Power of the Lesser Magistrates. Check it out. There's an audio book about the lesser magistrates, which is something that Americans are talking about like never before, because in July, August last year, some people started going on television saying the mask is not a political thing. The mask is a humanitarian thing. Yet there are so many polarized things. I'm not going to say what I'm thinking, but I'm going to tell you this much. It was said that the masks are not political. Yet there are political decisions that are being made. And states in America make a different stance. And it's not because of political, it's understanding that it all is politically decided based on everyone's culture, belief system, and then the polarization of corruption on the back end. I just want you to know that I know too much to be able to tell you what I know in the public arena, But when we understand what we know, and we know that we don't know some things, when you want to make the world a better place, Vlade and Ana Divac are amazing, because it's not just talk, no BS. They walk the walk. They put money to hand to feed the mouths. And Mr. Divac actually announced years ago about how if millions of people gave $1 a day, what we could do. I'm now Chief Generosity Officer of a company called Uncommon Giving. And the first international project is going to be Serbia. We're 250,000 people in Serbia, okay, give €1 a day. 250,000 people outside of Serbia giving $1 a day. That's €1 a day. That's €500,000 a day. That can go a long way in Serbia. And I just want you to know that that's one of the projects that I have. Mr. Popovic, I was kicked out of a major bank in America. No one knows this. They froze my cards, my credit card, my debit cards. They gave me 30 days to take my cash out. My friends are being kicked off Facebook. My other friends are being kicked out of banks, left, right, and center, here in America. The land of the free and the brave. It's coming. Carbon print, look it up. SEG, look that up. Social environmental governance. You got to look up SEG. Look up the carbon print that they're going to add. Not just GST, Mr. Popovic, but SEG tax on top of GST. It's coming for the environmental stuff, and it's an equalization of a neutralization of capitalism. And we believe in all this stuff where we got to understand, okay, how can we make a difference? How do we stand without offending anybody? And then how do we stay true to ourselves and try to do what we can to make the world a better place in our own sphere of influence? Correct.
It seems interesting that the key point to take away from that, I found, was you place a lot of emphasis on the importance of practice rather than just theory. You have to stand up, and it's not easy, but if you see an opportunity to resolve conflict, the action is what you have to take. The key, you're talking about happiness. Obviously, the point of conflict resolution is to create ultimately happiness and stability and peace. So in Bhutan, they have implemented a policy of gross national happiness index, which they use to measure the collective happiness and the well-being of the population. Do you think it's feasible to introduce such an index in other countries as a step towards the resolution of conflict in this polarized society?
When you're a man who's been around the world in 74 countries, and I've done 5 million kilometers around the world, and it's only about 36,000 kilometers to go once around the world. Asia has the largest rate of suicide in the world. Always will, because their culture is pressure to perform. And so I'm one of the most trusted foreign speakers in Asia for that. The greatest indicator for happiness, in my opinion, are two things. Number one, three things actually. Number one, dealing with your emotions. So many people don't understand the importance of getting a professional psychologist and counselor when you go through crap and when crap hits the fan. I'm the motivational speaker, and I went through counseling last year. Second thing is writing down 10 things that you're thankful for, and 5 things that are good, and 10 things that are good that you're thankful for, 5 things that were bad but could have been worse. It's called the attitude of gratitude. I've actually seen more orphans happy than billionaires. It's the attitude of gratitude. And lastly, the way to get out of depression is not to come around and say, don't worry, there's power within you. Just believe, and then things will change around you. Be good and good will happen. That's BS. Whether you're good or bad, bad things happen. And sometimes when you have cancer and your child dies in a car accident, all that goes freaking out the window. So the bottom line is your faith and belief system in understanding that you're an eternal being, a soul, spirit, mind, and then body, making the world a better place, sure, but also understanding that it's the way that we've been designed and created is a purpose-driven life. When you go and help a homeless person and you give them food, there is something that happens scientifically I don't know if this was ever a thing, but I'm going to tell you from my perspective as a master communicator in front of 9.5 million people face to face, meeting 500,000 people, doing anonymous surveys in 296 schools in American schools alone. I want you to know that when you talk about thoughts of suicide, attempting suicide, brokenness in the home, and bullying in schools, I have some data that I can tell you this way to say, right here, right now, Mr. Popovich, one of the greatest ways to get out of your depression is that when you don't get a miracle, go and be one for someone else.
It's fantastic. I think we could talk about this with you for so long, but unfortunately we have only a set amount of time. Thank you so much, Mr. Vujicic, for joining us, and I hope that soon we'll be able to enjoy your company here in Serbia and that you'll come visit us not just via Zoom, and wish you all the best of luck with your plans for the Ethical Bank as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Mr. Nick Vujicic. Now, our next guest also joins us via Zoom, and this is a real pleasure for me as well, because he's also, much like the gentleman over to my left, an American basketball player. He played the NBA. He's American-born, though, and he used to say, I remember seeing the video when he said he's a self-proclaimed Serbian. I was a massive fan before the NBA. I was a big Fab Five fan, along with him and Juwan Howard and Jalen Rose. So it's so great to have him with us here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Webber.
Hello?
There we go. Welcome. Congrats on the Hall of Fame, by the way.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And it's just been great hearing Nick and other speakers. I'm really inspired, and so I thank Vlade and Ana for doing this, because a lot of this starts with conversation, and it bleeds out from there. And so it's really awesome to be a part of this.
Now, one thing that I would love to get your take on, because last year the whole world witnessed the Black Lives Matter movement, and you've got such an insight being there, and you saw it from the get-go. Would you please tell us how it all started for people that maybe don't quite understand, and help us understand what exactly is the Black Lives Matter movement?
Okay. Well, I'll help kind of everyone to understand kind of the temperament and the feeling. Since I've been young, my parents have had to give me a speech about how to act around police officers. The reason why they've had to give me this speech is because if you are a person of color, black or brown, most times it's proven, percentages, all that stuff, but most times you're treated unfairly. What do I mean by unfairly? I mean that if you're black and you're white and you get caught for the same sentence, you're more likely to be charged 4 times more for the same sentence if you're black or brown. Yeah. Police officers are killing black men at traffic stops that are unarmed. I have a 4-year-old son. He's going to be very tall. He's going to be awkward like me. Probably when he gets around 14, he'll look like he's 18. I'm very scared of those days because officers don't listen. There's no community policing. And the first option many times is to shoot. Yeah. So when we came up to the playoffs last year, when I was 16, there was a big shooting of an unarmed black man, and I was 18. So it's been every year. And being that the only difference between me and these other gentlemen is that you may see my face on TV. So there's a familiarity. But if there isn't, and I have my head turned, I'm in trouble like everyone else. And so right before the game 5, I believe, of Milwaukee Bucks playing, I think the Raptors, an unarmed black man was killed in Wisconsin, home of the Bucks. In the locker room, the players were so distraught, crying, upset, hurt, because again, they have sons, some of them are black, and they understand that fear. And they called the league, and they said, this is something that we can't play today. We've been terribly hurt by what's going on, and we have to address it. I was proud of them in that moment because as our previous speaker, Nick, came on and says, you can be happy and lovey-dovey inside, but sometimes you have to stand. Sometimes you're gonna look polarizing. Sometimes people aren't going to understand. But it wasn't a time to worry about emotion. It was the time to make a statement that would last through history. And so I was very proud of these players who acted on emotion, who acted upon empathy, saying, we're not going to play tonight. We'll deal with whatever the consequences are. But because of them standing and not playing, that means that 4-year-old fans, 16-year-old fans, 70-year-old fans had to ask the question to someone else, why didn't they play tonight? And when you say, well, they didn't play because another unarmed black man was shot and killed by the police, well, that's the start of a conversation. The same that Ana and Vlade have done their whole life, but having this conversation. And there are so many ways to come out of a conversation that I've never really tried to control it, just to really put it out there and everyone interpret it as they will and hopefully act as they will. And so after that, a lot of things have been changed. And unfortunately, there's been the killing of 3 or 4 more unarmed black men after that event. So the boycott in no way changed how police officers act. But there is a conversation about community policing. If you're a police officer, should you live in the community that you police? Should you know your constituents? The difference between protect and serving or being scared and shooting. There's a conversation about how we train. We found out that there's systematic rules. Now we knew this, but we found out there's systematic rules in police office, in these policing groups about how it doesn't matter how you treat others, and if they're black and brown, they're not really human. So I'm really proud of the NBA for allowing the conversation. I'm proud of them for getting back to business. I'm proud of them for making it an inclusive conversation. And so that's really what happened with the NBA. As far as Black Lives Matter, I think people around the world have to understand something, that Black Lives Matter is an organization. We'll put that over there, and you can think whatever you want about that. I have no opinion on that. But Black Lives Matter, before it was an organization, was something that we would say in our homes. So whether it is the corporation or whether it is me being scared and telling, my nephew, be careful, our lives matter. Or saying to my friends of all different colors, they really don't value our lives like they do, yours. And just having that conversation, because what can a friend do at that moment besides just listen? And so I think what it did with the NBA, it started a conversation, it made awareness. And I think we can all admit, before any change happens, there has to be awareness. And I think they shined a lot on a lot of the systematic problems that we have when it comes to people of color in the land of the free, the home, and the brave.
It seems you raised a very good point there, the importance of getting the conversation started. And for myself as a white man, I mean, you can probably tell from the video, I'm normally a much lighter shade of white before I got back from Montenegro. But the thing that I found really important is this needs to be something which is important to you, even if you aren't directly affected. If you're not a black teenager who has to deal with this, you need to make it something that's important to you. And the reason I mention that is that you've actually been a supporter of the Ana and Vlade Divac Foundation from day one. And what was it about it that made you want to get involved and get involved in helping refugees and children from this part of the world, from Eastern Europe, from the Balkans?
Yeah, so, one thing that Rick talked about before he came on, I really try to live a purposeful life, a life of faith. I believe that if it were not for the grace of God, I would be in the same position. That's all. I think it starts with ego. Everyone thinks they deserve everything you have. I know you work very hard, but you don't deserve it. And that might be a tough conversation to have with yourself later, but it just means that there's something bigger than you, and we are all fortunate and blessed. And when we come from a position of that, I mean, I've got to see the beautiful countryside, the hills. I got to ride the trains, eat the beautiful food, and drink grappa, which I should not have done. That's another conversation. But it was a wonderful time. And then we go by these beautiful places, and we would see children. And Vlade said that's a refugee camp. I've never seen one in my life. I've seen homelessness. I've seen children homeless, and atrocities. But in those numbers, they probably are here in the United States, but they're hidden and they're not in one group. And I really couldn't believe what was going on. And Vlade being so caring, and I got to meet so many wonderful people. At the end of the day, when we talk about what's going on here, in America, there's a problem with policing and how you treat Black and brown people. When we talk about what Vlade and Ana are doing, there's a problem with children. There's a problem with making sure, if we go here, there's a problem here. We just need to understand that there's problems everywhere, and our call is to do what we can. And so, first of all, you have to know Vlade's heart. He's one of the best people that I know. And for Ana to marry and love him, she has to be the best person I know. And I know that, you know, they really care. If I were to call Vlade and to ask him to be at a movement where we talk about Black and brown lives, I know he would be there because he cares about Black and brown lives. He wouldn't say these lives matter too, or these lives matter too. If we talk about Asian hate here in America, we have to stand up for stopping Asian hate, period. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just empathy and the common sense of trying to be a good neighbor. And if you have a heart, I don't know how, if you're in a position to help, talk, or spread the word, that you wouldn't when you see those atrocities, and children are off limits. And so what Vlade and his wife does as far as helping children, bringing awareness, bringing people together like they are today is awesome, because out of these thousands of people on here, you know, it's not Vlade and Ana's job to change someone's mind. It's not their job to force you to give. Their job is to say, this is how much we love. Look at all these problems going on in the world. We got a few solutions. If you want to, come over here and help us. And just by having this many people on here, how will it spread? It's going to spread like wildfire just because of this. And so I thank them, because a lot of times you put things out there and you don't know who you're going to touch. And this is one of those situations. And the reason why I wanted to work with them is because I know their hearts is sincere. They don't just talk about it. This is not just corporate. This is who they are.
I think we've got time for one more question. I'd like to just ask, because we've got people tuning in from all over the world, what would you suggest is the best way for people who are not maybe in the US, who can actually help with conflict resolution, with the issues that are going on, particularly around obviously Black Lives Matter, but generally conflict resolution in the US and things that you're passionate about? How can we help and give back in the same way that you have to us?
You know, I really want to ask people to start being comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. I just think for so long as a Black man, we haven't had allies to have a conversation. It's always been, well, this guy was doing this, or well, this guy was, it was never the thought of, wow, that many people are getting shot, or wow, we really need to have a reckoning here. So I just want right now, and again, it's not the Black Lives Matter, it's more for people of color, Black and brown. I would love it if, you know, we all understand how unfairly women are treated, right? In the business sector, in homes, in governments, in countries. Well, if you're a Black woman, it's really bad too. So if the women could speak up on behalf of each other, just pay attention, be aware. That's my thing. On this call where we're talking about love, making change, I would say, to repeat from Rick, it's gonna be a time when you have to make a stand. To repeat from, you know, the previous speaker, it's in us, and all conflict does start within each of us, and that's how it comes. And I would just ask everyone to be aware, because I believe in God, and I believe He's going to speak and say how you can change. Only you know how you can add, whether it's give $1 a day, whether it's not, whether it's volunteer 1 day a month at the local school in your community. But I believe He's going to speak to that inside of you. And I just like everyone to be aware and open to issues maybe that you weren't before. And maybe it takes, you know, 10 news articles to understand what I'm feeling, or maybe it takes a year of reading and figuring it out. But just be open and be a great neighbor until then. And I believe in the will of the people. I believe that we do have to organize, you do have to stand. But on this platform where there's so many people that, you know, you had to log on, you wanted to be here. So to me, they're ready to go. And I would just ask you just to be aware, and whatever that spirit speaks to you, please act upon.
Well, thank you once again. It's been such a pleasure and a privilege. It's been surreal, but so real. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, what can I say? Chris Webber, and we hope to have you back in Serbia soon for another Rakia, seeing as we now know that you like it. So a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Chris Webber.
I'll bet one thing, It's Chris Webbervic. That's my name.
Chris Webbervic. I was waiting for you to say it. I remember the video. I thought I'll just a little bit of a throwback. Chris Webbervic, thank you very, very much for joining us. And recap to thank all of our guests that we've heard in this first bracket. Of course, Mr. Mohanji, Mr. Nick Vujicic, and Mr. Chris Webber. Now, at the risk of sounding like a cheesy TV presenter, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back soon. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody, and we're back. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in and getting their questions in online as well. Make sure that you do so, and we'll try to get to them at the end. Now we're right back here in our second bracket of today's conference, the role of an individual in overcoming conflicts in a polarized society. Now, what is the role of an individual in overcoming conflicts at any level, but particularly at a local level? We have here in the studio guests from Serbia who are leaders in their fields. I'll introduce the three of them. Once to my left here, we have Mr. Marko Čadež, President of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Serbia. Mr. Robert Čoban, who's over to the far left, President of the largest print media company in the region, Color Press Group. And to my right, Mr. Slobodan Đinović, lecturer at Harvard University and founder of Orient Telecom. Now, I might start with you, Mr. Čadež. Would you please take the lead and tell us how do you see the role of an individual in solving social problems on a local level?
So basically, the topics, first of all, I'm so honored to be here today, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I'm actually not here as a speaker, much more as a student to learn from all of you, because it was really beautiful what I've experienced today. But basically, the polarization, as we speak about that, has not a local or global component. It's a overall component. It's the polarization is mostly never about facts. It's mostly about emotions. And hearing all the stories, I think that what is real problem now in the society is that we are actually going the spiral of polarization more and more and more, which is giving us, or bringing us totally away from the position that we are actually capable of understanding the others, or understanding ourselves, if you want. Because if the emotions are funny things, it's the facts are the facts, but the emotions is always, some kind of crazy. So, and emotions are always very personal. So we can talk about societies, we can talk about political parties, we can talk about Serbia and Kosovo, we can talk about any problem, but basically if you just got in the core of this problem, is always being not capable or blocked to see deep in yourself and to see all the parts that you have as a personality, anger you, scare you, afraid you, which are actually part of yourself, part of your emotional level. It is more that shaping the identity. It is what we are. And having this kind of living in the mode that we are living today, we are every day more and more away from the position to be able to do that. And this position is actually the first step towards the possibility to understand the others. Because if you don't understand the point that you have your parts, which are actually very conflicted. I always quote the Woody Allen, I like him a lot, and he's saying, I'm every day, I don't agree with my opinion. So basically, we have it in our, just to be aware of that, to awareness of that, awareness of this kind of myself, which is totally diversified, which is different, which is unique, as we heard, but at the same time, to be totally aware and not in conflict with that. This is the first position of being able to really go and approach the others. And this is nothing to do with the local or global. We are now talking about business models. We have seen a lot of years of zero-sum games and business plans which were based, and concepts which were based on the, blue or red or whatever you want to call it. You have to lose something, that somebody has to win something, towards to some, let's say, from competition to cooperation, to some blue ocean strategies, which are now more or less the concepts that we are actually seeing as the concepts of future in the business sphere. But everything comes from first step, being able to see all conflicted sides of yourself, because these parts of yourself, if you neglect them, because any anger, if you see the Twitter or if you see social media, any anger or any aggression is always connected with some fear, and this fear is connected with something that we haven't actually realized with ourselves or cleared with ourselves to be able to understand it. We don't have to change it. We cannot change it. That's who we are, but we can understand it. And this position, this is something where the policies are asked, where the politicians are asked, where the institutions are asked to change the educational lines, to change the educational policies, to change how we treat our kids. Nobody is actually learning our kids. I have a 6-year-old daughter and I have a 20-year-old daughter. And nobody taught in the school or in the preschool to my kids how to teach awareness or meditation or being in the moment, being present, because this is the moment when you can realize that you are capable of everything, and you are actually everything. And you are also angry, and you have fears, and you have your doubts, and you are loving, but you're also strong. And this is something what nobody teach this generation, and nobody taught us. So we had to learn it. That's why we made a mess of this world in the last years. But basically, and this is the first position. Then we talked a lot about what is the ethical values. So you also asked a lot of questions about what is today, how do we actually, because if I live in the world I just discussed with Vlade, where it's credible in the society, Western society, it's credible to stake a point that you think that actually the epidemics is not existing, that the virus is not existing, that if this is credible point, this credible point to defend somebody who is shooting black teenagers on the streets, that is not credible. We cannot, it's always, it's as you in Germany would ask somebody to discuss with Himmler. It's not possible to discuss with Himmler because it's not plus and minus. It's not two sides. It's only one side. And we are, through this polarization and everything what we are living through, we are actually now in the position that everything is credible, that every standpoint is credible, that everything based on this, whatever you can polarize on everything now. And I just always, to think about it, I always quote Umberto Eco and his great essay, which is, if you want to translate it on English, it is called When the Other Enters the Stage. And this is universal ethical level of what happens in correlation with just one other person coming on your stage. And this is much more than belief system, much more than any political system. This is like universal rule that I don't want to be treated in the way that I treat somebody in the bad way. So yes. I don't want to be treated in that. This is only the easiest universal law that we have. And this is, again, these basics and roots of the ethics. How to change this? This is the problem now. So basically, this is a lot of work. I think, first of all, education, and second of all, to have more and more people who are bridge builders, like Vlada and Ana, Robert. So basically, the people who want to invest energy to build bridges. This is not easy today. This is really not an easy task. And like Nick or Chris, or just to engage yourself, to explain and explain and explain over and over again to the point that we are who we are different, we are unique, but this uniqueness actually gives us the responsibility to think what we do, how we treat the others. And first of all, this is something that I want to thank you and Vlade and Ana, which did an amazing job in the last years and the decades. It's really, I have seen a lot of NGOs in my life, a lot of NGOs in my life, believe me, a lot of them. And I never saw people who are actually engaged on this kind of personal level. I saw you too when Chris was talking about, and I saw tears in your eyes. I thought that you were really moved to help. And this is something with every aspect of your activity, when I see it in the past, is actually screaming, do something. Thank you very much.
So do you think that's key? That's fascinating. Do you think that that's the key, that to resolving conflict internationally, as simple as people standing up and actually putting their money where their mouth is and actually walking the walk rather than just talking the talk?
It is. The question is, who will do that except us? So, and the point again, it is not only if you go to the Nick Vujicic seminar or workshop and then you feel like Greek drama afterwards, you are like, oh, I released. But this is not really the, it's not the result. The result is that it's only a scratch. Sit down and think about actually yourself first. Think about your identity. Think about your parts of your personalities. Think about your conflicts and then go out. This is the only way you can do it. And this is the hard work. It is really hard work.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Čadež. Amazing points. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I'll now pass over to another of our guests here, Mr. Čoban. The Colour Press Group under your leadership publishes some 110 print media, newspapers and magazines throughout the region. What do you feel is the role of the media when it comes to dealing with conflicts?
So we don't have words, the land of the free and home of the brave, as we heard in our national anthem, like United States. Both of them, Nick Vujicic and Chris, mentioned those names. But we have some experiences in this field in last, let's say, 30 years when Ana introduced Mr. Đinović and me to Mr. Mohanji. She mentioned that we are against Milosevic during the 90s. I said we almost forget that it was so long time ago, and everything what's happened after that. So I will have focus on Serbia. Just a brief introduction. So we start to publish. I'm in publishing business 29 years, so almost 3 decades. We started as a student newspaper, Index, in 1992, and I can say there are like four different periods or 4 different eras. Even we can call it eras when we speak about media business and media perspective in Serbia, in the world also, but especially in Serbia. So 90s. So our transition was like 10 years late than in the rest of Eastern European countries. So after the fall of Berlin Wall in 1989, the major big media companies from Germany, Netherlands or Finland, they went to Poland, DDR, Czech Republic, and they almost bought the 90% of media business in those countries. So during the 90s, it was Milosevic here, and it was bad, of course, because of war, because of hyperinflation, because of everything what happened. But it was good for us as a local player, as a local media owners, to start our own business from nothing and to build company and see 2000 when Milosevic was down, and to start to do license magazines in cooperation with big international companies. So these first 10 years in media perspective, you can imagine it was hyperinflation. In January 1994, when I was first time in the United States, the cover price of magazine Svet was 500 billion dinars, and those numbers were on the end. When I was in Washington, they said, what is this? Is this Germany in 20s? It was really hard. So it was war in Bosnia, war in Croatia, a NATO bombing campaign in 1999. After that, we said, okay, now will be the second phase, so the golden era, especially in print media field. So next 8 or 9 years were golden era, so everything was booming, advertising. That was before those smartphones, so before 2007 and 2009 when first iPhone was introduced. That was era of transition in Serbia. Pretty good governments. In this era, in the middle of this era, we had also assassination of our prime minister, which is also part of our recent history, which is not normal situation in many other countries. And after that, it was third period. After, in same year, in our industry, it was economic crisis, 2008 and 2009, and this huge technological changes that all readership and everything moves from traditional media platforms, from print, from television or radio to online. So we were hit from two sides in same time. So after that, it was this third period with huge importance of social media and huge influence of social media. And now it is, I can see, after what's happened with Trump and all populism movement all over the world, Brexit and everything, this post-truth era, this era of fake news, and now era of pandemics and after pandemics. So those four periods we can recognize in last 5 years. Back to this topic. Importance of personal view, of personal influence of people who are in media, of people who are celebrities in different fields of celebrities is extremely important. According to latest researches, I think USAID organized this research end of this last year. More people in Serbia believe to influencers than to print daily newspaper as a source of information, not as a source of entertainment or as a source of information. More people believe in to influencer. So the problem is that many people, this is the case in Serbia, but I think it's more or less in the region and the rest of the world, people who are in business area or magazine or media owners, they are, I think I'm in 10% of those people. Maybe Marko and rest of this party can correct me. They are not always in mood to comment social things, not political. We are not talking about political issues, but let's speak about cultural heritage. I was focused in this cultural heritage protection field in last 1 or 2 years. In ecology, environmental things, people said, "Okay, I'm rich enough, I'm successful enough, and why would I speak about something which can be problematic, which can make for me some problems with government or with different political parties or from competitors?" And 90% or 80% people, they remain silent about all social things. And I think this is the problem, because today audience and people, they will believe more to those influential persons, that they can stop those conflicts. They can introduce some good views, some good international experience. But those people say, okay, it's better and safer for me to stay silent.
It's very interesting. It seems the common theme has been the importance of speaking up. And perhaps that's why the influencers, they speak so much that people take it all as gospel. One thing that I thought was really very, very interesting is the importance of obviously connecting and being able to communicate with others. When I mentioned to a friend that you were coming on the panel today, first thing that I was told was, oh, he just connects the unconnectable. He's able to see the best in everyone. What do you think is the key in terms of conflict resolution and being able to connect people? What's the key in being able to do what I've been told you're phenomenal at?
they say I'm half person, half conference, usually. So this is the only conference that I'm not organizing in this month. Before pandemics, we originally, as I mentioned, we are in print media business and of course online and everything else. But 5 or 6 years ago, we started to organize different events because we realized, as a local player, this event industry, conferences, festival, different kind of events is thing for us. In this field, we can be better than, I don't know, Google and Facebook because they took 90% of online advertising. So we cannot beat them in their area, but in the area of making connection, as you mentioned, I don't know, in Novi Sad, mayor of Novi Sad, German ambassador, German president of German Chamber of Commerce, 5 big beer producers, 50 small craft beer producers, putting together and organizing Oktoberfest in Novi Sad 5 years ago, first time. So you need to be with this, of course, social and connecting skills that you can put all those political and different people and things together, and to be present local. I like to travel, especially we are based in Vojvodina, in Novi Sad, and that's maybe because in my blood I have 5 different nationalities. In my blood I'm surrounded with people of different religion, different nations, different culture, different habits, and I try to travel cycling through Vojvodina to speak with people, to understand all processes, what's happened now. So if you sit always in Belgrade or in Novi Sad in your office, or nice Madeira restaurant, or Klub Književnika, there is no way to see everything what's happened, and Serbia changes fast. Things changes fast in Serbia, in whole world, but especially after this pandemic. So you can move, you need to move, you need to speak with people, you need to communicate, you need to not be afraid about speaking with different people, even with people who are not agreed with you, or always. So I think this is the only way. And in this online world, when pandemic started last April, we start to organize online conferences like this, sometimes 100% online, sometimes this hybrid way like this one, and still stay in touch with people. I don't know, we have book talk conference about books and book publishing, and we organized this conference last September online because we need to know what is the opinion of people, of authors in Sarajevo, in Zagreb, in Ljubljana. They are not able to come to Novi Sad and to sit with tamburaši and to drink this rakia you mentioned to Mr. Weber. But I think online allows us to stay in contact, and it is really great importance of conferences like this. And really thank you Vlade and Ana for having us today, and those great people online, because everything is in communication, in trust, and in this thing that you need to speak as a person, and you need to stay from your name, from your career, from your company portfolio, said, okay, I will speak against this, or there is always problem. In this series Crown, 4th season of Crown, it was conversation between Queen Elizabeth and Margaret Thatcher. And Queen Elizabeth asked Margaret Thatcher, is this clever, making enemies left, right, and center? And Margaret Thatcher said, yes. I will quote famous poet, Chartist poet from England from 19th century, is Charles McCoy. You have no enemies, you say, blah, 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 blah. Small is the work you have done. So sometimes you need to fight if you believe if you believe in your idea, you must not be always afraid. Oh, I will avoid all conflicts. Sometimes you need to fight for your idea. And not always like Margaret Thatcher, but
absolutely. But you're right. You will have opponents, and part of that. Do you feel that there's something important about being able to say something beneficial about your opponents? Not just, you can obviously have differing views and you can be opponents, but how beneficial is it to say something nice about them? It seems a very simple thing, but to resolve conflict.
No, absolutely. You need to be able, and that was always on my Facebook. On my Facebook profile, the cover photo is Liberty Guided People, this Delacroix painting from 1831, because idea of freedom and idea of liberty that I can say everything I believe in 90s, during Koštunica and Đinđić regime, during Boris Tadić, and today during Vučić. I never have any major problem speaking on or tweeting on Twitter, everything, because they know that I believe in this and I'm clear about this, and you need just to be brave to speak what you believe, and everything will be good. But if you are afraid, as unfortunately many people are, the problem is in this.
Now, I've got one more question for you. You have a project coming up, Connecting and Saving the World. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that applies to this topic?
Which?
You're Connecting and Saving the World, the project for renovating old castles in Vojvodina.
Castles, yeah. That was also because of pandemic. So last April, I started to travel through Vojvodina with my bike, so cycling, and I saw that there are so many old and beautiful castles and villas and beautiful buildings all over Vojvodina and all over Serbia that are in horrible condition. And it was initiative from Ministry of Mr. Momirović, Ministry of Construction, and Ministry of Culture, Maja Gojković. They formed a government body, government commission. The first task of this commission was to list all castles and all those heritage protected objects, and to find the ownership, what is private, what is under restitution, what is state owned, and the next step will be to start one by one to renovate them and to try to save them for future generations.
One last thing I actually just did think I really wanted to ask, because I know that the media gets a bad rap and people say that sometimes they're responsible for public sentiment. If you had to try and defend that statement, do you think that the media creates public opinion, or does public opinion does the public dictate what the media sort of shows?
You just need to see, it's not case of course only in Serbia, but you just need to see our parliament, or Croatian parliament, or Bosnian parliament, and you can see what is the public opinion, what is everything. So I always defend media. I don't think media are responsible for this.
Thank you very much for your wise words. I appreciate it, Mr. Čoban. Now, Mr. Đinović, when we talk about overcoming conflicts, and I get to turn this way a little bit, how important is education? How important is education for the younger people to actually be able to learn life-changing skills that will then be able to tackle this issue of overcoming conflicts?
I did something okay or bad? Okay. Well, thank you for, it's a good question. It's one of my most welcomed ones. And I think, first of all, the topic is very interesting, and it's totally within the field where I spent quite some years, and thanks to Ana and Vlade for this initiative. I think it's going to be very important to bring this issue a bit closer. I think it's instrumental, to be honest. You know, my basic education was naval architecture, so I've been studying mechanical engineering over here. That's the street where the grass does not grow, you know, as we used to say. And then, you know, as an engineer, I had ability to go and take my first course at the Fletcher School at Tufts in Boston, and I was amazed with the notion of how unimportant things that I've never studied over here are the most important over there. The second biggest notion was the honor code. You know, we never understood that. And now when Robert is talking about our student era, I was amazed to receive this big booklet of documents to say, basically, I praise, I'll never actually do anything that's unethical. And they gave me the paper within the envelope and said, that's your first exam, open it up whenever you're ready and do it at your disclosure and just follow the instructions. So imagine students from Serbia, you know, seeing that. We were the masterpiece of just, you know, overwriting, cheating, and all these things. So basically, you know, that put me in a position to understand that, and I was privileged to have professors which were the world-known, you know, authors and leaders in their fields. I don't know, like Richard Folsgraf was my thesis advisor, Robert Schultz as well. And the problem was that I quickly understood that couple of things we actually never put so much light on, and we never understood how important is understanding simply the social science. You know, for me as an engineer, that was totally non-practical. So what I was doing, I was putting my math in front of all of these theories these guys were putting. So when I was defending my master thesis, I think, yeah, it was master thesis, and so I had about 45 slides of numbers. And so these people were looking at me and saying, like, are you going to finish? Because there are questions to be asked. And I said, like, 5 more. After 45 hours, they're saying, like, please finish. And I had more and more slides, you know, with the numbers. The bottom line was it was easier for me, but it was not possible for anybody else to understand. So no one asked any question. I got straight A, and that was the only A that day, you know, so it was good tactic. But the bottom line is, for example, once you talk to the business leaders, entrepreneurs here, they don't know anything about negotiation tactics and politics. Like, what are the differences between the vertical and horizontal negotiation? I think conflict resolution fits within the horizontal negotiation issue. That's about building the teams, building the unity, planning, and building the discipline in making these plans being alive. And those 3 principles are the most important. You don't learn that in Serbian schools. When I taught one course in Faculty of Political Science, it was non-credit course, and it was for 2 years. I remember that the Dean Vujicic, you know, he was a very interesting guy. She showed up one day and said, like, look, what you do over here, it's not a science, really. And he said, so therefore we are terminating this. So I was sad. In about a week from there, I got invitation from Harvard to come and teach the exact same curriculum. And that's I think it's a pity. But there are a lot of things which are done unofficially, out of credits here, which are now fine and great. And I'm just talking to our friend over here, and he has a great workshop run, and I'm really pleased. But just to be bored with a few things, look, you cannot understand the conflict resolution until there is understanding of how does the power work, really. And people would be amazed to know there are only 5 sources of power in every society. It's material resources, human capital, skills and knowledge, ability to impose the sanction, and authority. And that's only 5. That's all that you have. So there is no such a thing, despite of our political beliefs, there is a guy on the top who decides on everything, and you just remove him and everything goes the other way. No, that's not the truth. Because there are a number of pillars where this power is exercised through. And that's a Gene Sharp theory. And that's also Curcio Malaparte, who wrote about it 500 years ago. And what is the fascinating about these pillars is that these pillars are numerous. You know, we most often see bureaucracy, we see police, we see economic pillars, we see media, we see organized religion, educational system. But there are more and more non-state stakeholders which are now playing global roles. Like, look at the ISIS. It's a non-state stakeholder which ran the part of the world for about a couple of years. Look at the whole environmental movements, which are now making the global impacts, and those are not organized by UN, or how we call it, United Nothing, right? That was cool. By the way, many of my students, while I was teaching at NYU, were coming from UN. And so I was questioning them often, so why do you take this course? Because you have such great jobs. And they're like, because we want to take the job of our boss. So that's why we need credentials. That's about education. You know, it gives you a lot of things. It's put in perspective. When I was a student, we were really running the whole big organized movement against Milosevic. And I'm more and more pleased we did that. But I was never able to understand some questions, understand some issues, and answer some questions until I really studied why is this happening. So if you if you study these pillars, for example, and you just study them historically in some historical framework, like for about 5-10 years, and just judge them on how they behaved in certain situations, project those same issues in the future, they're going to exactly act in the same way. So if you study some well, you will know how they will react in difficult situations. And then, you know, many people are just thinking that there is so far bigger complexity about this individualism. It's not actually. You know, people are driven on a simple mechanism. It's enthusiasm versus fear. That's it. That's how it works. If you look at about how, you know, are we loyal to one thing, one person, we have multiple loyalties, we have multiple loyalties. So what's going on with us? Everyone and everybody are trying to win over our loyalties. And so we are loyal to our family, you know, in the biggest portion, to our, you know, friends, to our work, to our government, to our country maybe, to our president maybe, to many different institutions. And guess what? Like political leaders will always try to, you know, equalize that loyalty to them, to your country, to your work, to your job, and make your behavioral patterns predictable. And that's why we have now behavioral science. I mean, 10 years ago, we never thought we would get that, right? Like Hans Rosling just wrote a great book. I recommend it. It's called Factology. So he did simple things like by asking people, okay, do you believe that people are now more poor or less poor than 20 years ago? Guess what? About 67% people would say we are more poor, which is not a fact. We are actually far less poor than 10 years ago. And then another cool experiment is that people asked to make a choice between three are on average guessing with about 27%. Now, if you put the same choice in front of apes or monkeys, they're going to do 33%. So the apes are going to do more of mathematical, you know, criteria of probability choicing than actually us. Why? Because of all the knowledge that we think we have, but we don't. And so, look, I'm not, as Ana said, I don't look like a professor. My students actually do call me that, and I'm always freaking out because I'm turning, you know, like, whom are they calling? I'm professor of practice. I'm adjunct professor in all of these universities because obviously I was not interested in getting my tenureship. It's a long and difficult road. But the problem that, for example, I'm facing over here is we are simply not trying to adopt and implement in our educational system, not only here in the region, something that could help us tremendously. Like we are Balkan mentality, you know. Our nature of negotiation, for example, it's positional bargaining. That means wins it all, right? When I sit with you, I'm an entrepreneur as well. My company has been built out of my frustration because there was no such a good service in terms of the fixed broadband. So, and whenever you sit and position yourself as someone negotiator saying like, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to get everything. Well, actually, integrative negotiation is the future, is the answer. Like, what are the zone of possible agreements? What are the best alternative to negotiate agreements? How do we study our opponents? How do we find something that's implementable? Look at, for example, Serbian political issues like Kosovo. Kosovo is totally positional bargaining negotiated agreement, which in a reverse, it's now pushing us to renegotiate. And that's going to be for as long as that until we get integrative solution for that. So not too many people that you can find around here are doing these kind of topics, and I think it would help us a lot, business-wise, politically, socially. But I just want to say that you know, my organization that I'm chairing, which is called Canvas, many Robert's, you know, friends would say, you know, like private intelligence or whatsoever. We are just basically the small think tank that does the global work. We've been working with over, I don't know, name any movement that you read about. So. And we've been dealing with many different movements, and movements are fascinating things because movements are not built to win political power. Movements are built to implement new values within society. And they're like mainstream, they reach the peak and they go down. Why they reach the peak? Because recruitment is so high at some point. People are enthusiastic. And then they either got afraid or they fulfilled what they wanted and it just disappears. And so that was the movement in Serbia before 2000. And that's how we could have done that, not otherwise. But what I want to say is, you know, I think that Đinović and Maria Stefan wrote a great book, and they studied all different movements and conflict resolutions in the last 100 years. And they literally you know, did all the analysis, and they said out of 100, only 2 have been sustainable and stable within 5 years from the conflict when it started, and those were the violent ones. Only 2. About 98 different of those are still stable and progressing, and those are non-violent. Meaning, like, conflict resolution is a thing to be. It's a thing to study. It's a sleazy term, you know. People are using it for all different issues. But I think understanding the other side and understanding how individually we can actually do the things. By the way, there are different theories about the movements, how they're grown. But you have a great TED talk about the movement, how it's born. You know, it takes one crazy nut to be the crazy nut, right? You do something crazy. We've been talking about getting naked. But then the first follower is going to make leader out of the crazy nut. And then the third one is probably going to lean towards movement being organized already. Okay, cool. So that's what movements do. And I think in our environment right now in Serbia and regionally, we are lacking of the movements. That's what we need to make people enthusiastic about. If we can actually inspire them to do the things, education is something to be, you know, born and driven by the need, right? And so I think if we see more people going into that, probably we're going to see some feasible course in some university around it.
It's interesting what you mentioned about not being comfortable with or used to the professor thing. It's like when Nick said to me, Mr. Popovic, and I thought I was my dad here. So still not used to that myself. But the point that I wanted to raise was an interesting one because you mentioned education, but you're obviously a Harvard lecturer, but you started out with work in Otpor, doing you know, obviously during the Milosevic regime. So you did the opposite. You went practical and then you've gone to theory. Was it difficult to go? Because normally people go theory and then practice.
Well, look, I mean, if you do the revolution, there is no time for education. You know, that's just something that historians like to do. So when I was just laughing at, because I met some of these people from BLM a long time ago. Before the BLM, it was a different name for it. It was mostly about the Mexicans and Latinos looking for their rights. And I know that once George W. Bush won for the second time, some of the Democrats asked me, like, hey, how do we organize like you did in Serbia and just get rid of these guys? And I said, like, look, you know, give up on your jobs, move back into your parents' house, you know, homes, be ready to work now for the next 4 years, have one pair of pants, you know, jacket, that's it. That's how the revolution is, you know, it's a tough, it's a difficult, it's a commitment. And I think what Otpor was great about was that people do not see the things correctly. First of all, that movement has been born based off literally necessity of playing around. We were just a group of 5 guys, and I can literally, you know, give you the moment where we're sitting in a bar and just drinking and making fun of ourselves, how unsuccessful we are actually, and you know how we are not going to be able even to immigrate from this country. You know, that's how bad it was. And then we said, okay, let's start making the fun at our schools. And so what we knew about professors who were appointed by the government. And so we would just set up the clocks. And those clocks would start making noise, alarms, right? And it would just start ringing. And they would find one, but the next one would start. It was just making all these, you know, mess. And so, but I want to say, learning that by your mistakes, it's a harder way, obviously, right? So. A lot of things that we've done those days actually later started making sense, not only in just what I learned about it when I studied it and when I started teaching other movements, because my teaching actually came as a result of me ending up in Georgia, in Belarus, in Cuba, and just working with all these dissidents. You know, dissidents community globally are very close and small, and you learn people, and you're looking for the answers, and you get your friends in the basic same issues and situations. And so once you get over that hurdle that you're busted and arrested first time, you know, second time, then it gets easy. So learning about that, I have to tell you, it's all there, it's all written. I think that non-violent struggle and the conflict resolution are the biggest topics of 20th century when we speak about political science. And the authors who wrote about those they made the biggest contribution to that political science. When you go and listen just these theories these days, I was amazed. You know, when I did my first, when I started teaching at Belgrade Political Science School, I actually went for some classes to listen. these people are literally reading from the books, you know, that's how they taught. And just imagine going to US and just doing that. My students would kill me, you know, I would be kicked out immediately. And so I'm saying going backwards, it has its own positive effects. But do not neglect that this is very young science. There is not so many people who are doing research. There is many to be done. For example, there are great things. Like you can see right now that in every society which is facing the main problems, like Chris Weber was talking about people of color in the US, the problem is about what is the critical amount of people when the whole issue actually turns around. You know, how many people you have to get in the streets to be able for the minority to understand that there are minority and the majorities on the other side. No one actually explained that, and there is a lot of things to be done, you know, a lot of research to be made. And no one is focusing on that. Now we are talking about negotiation within the conflict resolution. None of these. I was actually, I have a great friends, you know, Fish Uri, Nadila Jam, Dayan Chigas. These are people who've been resolving Palestine-Israeli issues, Cyprus-Turkish issue. But none of these are actually focusing on negotiation within conflict resolution. So there is a lot of things to be done. And I think that we have brilliant kids over here who would be able to contribute a lot to that. And I do not consider myself being scientist. I'm more practitioner. I'm an activist, actually. So I run telco company for my basic needs. But if you be my CFO, you know, you would be totally scared. I'm not going to say something else of how do I invest money or what do I do with all of that. I mean, Marko knows a bit. So, but I'm saying the whole point is that there are so many things that we can do over here, and I'm actually inviting my friends a lot to come and do. And I think that probably the whole region and even globally we could benefit and contribute a lot. By the way, not so many people know, but some other world-known conflicts, like for example Middle East, they're studying us. You know, it's unbelievable to understand, but for example, there's a lot of scholars from Lebanon in Serbia these days studying about how did we manage to get ourselves in a position to work and live with, for example, people from Raška, you know, from Sandžak, Novi Pazar. How do we integrate these people in the system? It's totally amazing, but they do that. They study that.
Just one last question for you. Do you think that education should be free for all, given how important it is in potentially shaping how we overcome these issues?
Like all my books you can download for free. Everything my organization does, it's for free. We do what we want to do. No one is financing us. We are not taking any governmental grants. Basically, it's my money and my friends, you know, who are crazy as I am to do this. So I would never be able to get into school if I wouldn't have Peter Ackerman being my friend, and he was chairman of the board of, you know, at the time. And he asked me to do some coding for his company. I said, yes, I do that, but if you pay me for the school and you're the chairman of the board, it's going to be cheaper for you. And the guy fell from the chair thinking, you know, like, this is not Serbia. I have to pay the full tuition. So I'm saying it's becoming awkwardly expensive. I don't think that it can go that way. But I also do think that we are suffering from much bigger disease, which is this elitism, you know, from... because in the US, I mean, Ana, Vlade can say that, there is a big issue about right now. I think academia is going to change a lot in terms that at NYU, my school, School of Global Affairs, for example, it's 400 of us adjunct professors of practice and only 12 tenures. I think that's going to be changing a lot. I don't think you're going to be looking for PhDs to be eligible to teach. I mean, you want to see the Nick, the Chris, you know, want to see Marko, Robert, people, you know, who can contribute a lot. So in that sense, I think the schooling system is right now what you pay. I have to say that you pay for networking, for reference, and you know, for example, right now, I'm not even sure if I should use my reference as a lecturer at Harvard because they give you such a big document signing where and how you can use that. So I think that bureaucracy is causing that to be done in such a way so expensive. And I admire people investing in education. I think this is the most important at the moment. I want to say one more thing. I'm obviously in telecoms, and that's the place where my colleagues and I think the people whom my company hire are on average 20 plus, a little bit, right? That's the. So we set up we bought the best building that we could. We invested a lot into their, you know, environment. We pay, I would say, fairly good fees, And then nothing really worked until we built incubator, set up our startup funds, started actually playing with them and making them being partners rather than employees. I'm saying environments are changing. I think the way and the form of education are going to change. The workshops are going to be the ways we are going to be trained and actually conduct some things. I mean, you can literally conduct the surgery if you look at the YouTube, and these things. So in a sense, I think these old terms, schooling and everything we have done, I think it's disappearing. And Canvas, just go to canvasopedia.org. My guys and friends are just doing the trainings all across the world as we speak right now. I think today it's Burmese, group. So it's and these guys are not going to Harvard to learn on how to deal with military junta. So it's going to change a lot in terms of how it's done, who is doing it, how much it costs, and so on and so on.
Thank you, Professor Đinović. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for that, Professor.
Indeed, education should be free and accessible for all, and I think it's important to note that Divac Foundation is working towards that goal by helping students from vulnerable groups with scholarships, and together with individual donors, the foundation has helped around 450 high school students from vulnerable groups with monthly scholarships, thus allowing them to focus on getting an education in order to find better employment later in life and break the chain of poverty, which is very commendable. I did mention just before we wrap up that, and I pass the final word to Ana to say a few words, we have taken some questions from people who are following online. So we've got one here which is just for everyone, so whoever wants to sort of chime in with this one. The question that we have, and they've asked to stay anonymous, what about today's situation and polarization on a daily level? Vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, people maybe supporting Zvezda, some supporting Partizan, Red Star Partizan, and so on. How do you deal with this on a daily level? Who'd like to take this?
It is... It's a classical issue where I think we are doing something in the wrong way. Because I said one of the sources of power is its ability to impose the sanctions. We're trying to incentivize people to get vaccinated. I think that's wrong. I think we should actually, prescribe the rules and criteria for the behavioral of everybody, and everyone who accepts or doesn't accept. And I think populism interfering in what we have right now, it's actually doing dramatic and difficult impacts to the people. By saying like we'll pay you to do that, like Marko knows. I mean, we're meeting each other at the chamber, discussing these issues of the economy and everything else. But listen, I mean, I would never pay anyone to get vaccinated. That's ridiculous. So the issue of polarization is actually something that's causing us a lot of trouble, and I think it's causing us a lot of trouble on a daily level because people do mix up the social networks, the social media with the substance of the life. That's my business. I live based on selling you internet and connectivity. But the point is that only accelerates. It's not a substance itself. You cannot create virtual movement online. That doesn't help. It never works. You have to have real people in the end. So the polarization of that kind, it's also in relation to that lack of enthusiasm that we are having right now. My generation, and probably yours, was all about how do we organize something and, whom are we against if we are not for. But the point over here is that we are just living in this virtual world, and I think a lot of things we could do about it. I could give you examples, but it doesn't matter now. Maybe better I shut up.
Well, I think that brings our discussion today to an end, but to formally close it, I would pass over to Ms. Ana Divac to say a few words.
Thank you very much for all of your great insights and advices. The whole idea about all of this, I love being and listening to all of you. I'm so inspired, such a great energy, but then we go all separate ways and your energy goes with you. So when I first met Mohanji on his a workshop, I was so inspired that he's not creating followers, he's creating leaders in their personal life and transforming people in their personal life in the community. And I got the idea that would be great if we can have that on one place and build a peace center, and he agreed. That he would support that and he would participate in that project. And I think that's from every side that we go, we come to one conclusion. Doesn't matter if it's political science, doesn't matter if it's transformation, doesn't matter if it's media. anything comes to one thing, that everything starts with us, changing us, and then we can go like forward. And I read some statistics that they were saying in 60s how political parties were approaching their opposition. Only 10% of their campaigns were like going against someone, saying bad things about opposition. Today, only 10% is saying like a positive things. So that creates like a lot of negative things in society. So our idea is to make like a peace center, so that we can work on our peace from inside, so that we can go and do it outside in society and learn kids, educate every person how to do that, you know, and how to overcome the problem. And I'm so glad that we can do that, and all these energies can come together and be on the same place, so that people know where to go, that people know how they can study and how they can approach that. So thank you very much, and now I'm inviting all of you to come to Madeira for a dinner. I think we all deserve that, as mentioned before, and for drinks, and was my privilege, yeah.
And
it's a Serbian style,
Zoom,
yeah, under table.
The Zoom people can join as well. We'll set up a phone, you can watch. I mean,
yeah.
It's like you're there.
And thank you, Stefan, very much. Yeah, we're gonna make movement in Madeira. Okay, so, but that's great, yeah, let's make a movement. Yeah, yeah, that's a conclusion. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to our guests from the first bracket and from the second. And stay tuned, keep following everything, the great work of the foundation. And we'll keep you posted on when the next conference is and what our next topic will be. But for now, ciao.